It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 427. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Grace.
Yo, ayo.
Kodra.
Yo.
Tam.
Yo.
And Thalen.
Sure.
So yeah, the reference that Grace made is Last Epoch really needs a new theme song.
Aha.
It is
It's the vowel song.
E-O, A-O.
Ayo,
It's the vowel song. I was like,
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll talk about Last Epoch in a bit, but this weekend I unintentionally committed the sin we talked about the other day of trying to play something on release day, and not even being a release day, but like the opening of Diablo IV Beta.
yeah, that sounds like it probably was a bit
It was
of
a mess. Yeah, it was a mess, and apparently there wasn't a streamer client because all the streamers were getting stuck by the hour-and-a-half long queues just like everyone else was. I was already off work on that day, so I thought, oh, hey, I'll try and get connected, and yeah, it was a thing, but I have now played enough of the game to get to level 22, which is the point at which it unlocks some cosmetic for playing the open beta. Like, I think it's 20 is how far you need to get. This weekend was for people who purchased the game, and I had a copy gifted to me, and that is a thing. So,
I mean, it was also apparently the weekend for people who bought a horrible
yes.
food item.
Your other option was that you could have bought one of the double downs from KFC, the meat on meat sandwich. That thing that's just two chicken breasts plus cheese and stuff in between.
Blizzard had a deal with KFC that...
And it's not just a deal with KFC. It's a deal for buying that specific sandwich. If you can call it a sandwich.
I mean...
Look,
I don't know.
I try not to think about that one too much, honestly.
So I gotta be honest, like, I'm not sure if I like this game. I also have to be honest, like, I was in an earlier phase of testing, and I was not sure enough that I didn't play any of it, other than, I don't know, like the first 5 levels, and didn't get invited back to later phases because I guess I didn't play enough. So for all this time, I thought they were going to be trying to recruit the players that loved Diablo 3 but did not like Diablo, or loved Diablo 2 but did not like Diablo 3, that ultimately went off and became the Path of Exile community. That's who I thought they were going after when they started talking about all the grim darkness. Instead, like, the game is honestly a lot more similar to like an isometric mobile MMO.
Whoa.
Like, and I don't mean that like it's not a horrible game, but it is very much Diablo the MMO.
You don't mean that in a bad way, but it's hard to imagine you meaning that in a good way.
Yeah, like, I mean,
right.
Like if it were a mobile game, it would be one of the nicest mobile games, but it reminds me of all of those isometric MMOs that are so popular on mobile games. I mean, you don't have the button that says play for me, but like a lot of the same structure is really similar. So you're roaming around in an open world with a lot of other players that are, also doing stuff. They leaned into, like events that you happen across. The game itself, I am pretty sure at some point during its development life cycle, someone on the team described it as the Dark Souls of Diablo games. because like it's combat is really slow, and it is really like it is a game that wants you to feel the combat and that your actions matter and that you need to dodge a lot.
Have they ever played an ARPG?
I don't know. This is part of the confusion that I'm having. Like, it's not a bad game, but it's just really slow. Like when you start a Demon Hunter in Diablo 3, it is kind of a miserable experience for the first 10 levels. And then between 10 and 15, things start to fall together and that class starts to feel good. And that would be fine because in Diablo 3, getting to that point is maybe 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Leveling in this game is a lot more. Like and maybe this is just a problem with the barbarian, but like I am following one of this is the best barbarian builds, and combat just feels sluggish, and the time to kill is like super slow. Like what I would expect for World of Warcraft or something like that, like not an ARPG.
That does not sound like what I want from a Diablo game.
Yeah, so like, I mean, it really, like, if you can put your frame of reference of this is an MMO that looks like Diablo, then it feels a little bit better, but like, it doesn't really feel like an ARPG. Like, if I were going to say it felt like anything at all, it would be maybe Dark Alliance or something like that, but like a Dark Alliance with more slow, weighty combat. And like, all the bosses seem to be like just tanky as all get out with like, it feels like fighting a legendary mob actually what the bosses remind me of is when you fight the legendary rogues in Guild Wars 2. The ones that summon after you fought the champion that already almost kicked your ass.
So I realize that people use the Dark Souls of X to mean it's super hard.
Yeah.
But I do need to stress, in Dark Souls games, if you are playing well, bosses just sort of fall over to you. Like, the bosses are hard, they're gonna kill you a bunch, but like, it's very much they die quick or you die quick.
Yeah. That's not this. These are just kind of, everything feels drawn out.
I have to stress, one of the things that makes Dark Souls work is like sometimes you're able to do well enough that you can just kind of DPS race down, and then maybe you just miscalculate and they stomp you flat, and you've got them at like 5%.
Right.
But like that's Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Dark Souls is not.
This feels like I'm going to dodge roll forever.
Yeah.
Like.
Dark Souls is not about like 10-minute boss fights.
Yeah, like, I mean, and all the bosses have those kinds of bars where it is clearly segmented into 4 parts so that once you get them down a part, something's going to happen. There's going to be an intermission, and then you have to do the next quarter of a bar. There's a lot of cool stuff going on, and like, I don't want to discount the fact that there's a lot of cool stuff going on. Traversal of the world is pretty cool, but they're having performance issues with that, so you will get hit by these invisible walls where if the game is functioning as it should, you should be transitioning into a zone invisibly and you don't even know it's happening. But what's actually happening is you're hitting a wall and you can't proceed it because the instance you're trying to load into is too busy. So you bounce against a wall for a few seconds before it finally lets you through into the next area. But that could just be beta, and the resources aren't where they should be.
That puppy looks really cute.
The puppy is really cute. Yeah, that's why I wanted to get to 20, is in case for some reason, my friends keep telling me that, remember, every live service game ends up looking very little like what it launched as. So there may be a time in which like this is a game that I really want to play. It's got some cool systems. Like if you get a legendary item, you can eat the legendary to basically get the legendariness of the item and put it on any other item. And like there's a bonus for you putting it on the correct item, but like if you want to take a sword, sword's probably a bad idea because I don't think you can do that with cross weapon and armor. But like if you took something that was like a belt before and you want to put it on your tunic, then you could do that. Like there's a certain number of slots that it will go into, and you get the stats of the item plus the legendary bonus effect of it. So like that's kind of cool. If you do dungeons, you unlock a pattern for a legendary, and each dungeon has a specific one that it unlocks. So like you go there to get, a rogue one or a druid one or a warrior one. And those are cool. Like they're nice items that you can craft early on. They like there's a bunch of things that they've done well, but it still doesn't really feel like an ARPG. Like even when you're in a dungeon, which is the instanced content in the game, it still feels like you're playing a World of Warcraft dungeon. Because like it has the same beats to where like you fight a mini boss and you maybe fight another mini boss, and then that unlocked another area. Then you might fight another mini boss, and then that'll unlock the final area. And the final area will have a big boss fight. And like when you look at the zone map, they're even labeled in 3 regions like that. So it very much feels like this is Diablo the MMORPG. And like maybe they're trying to go after the Lost Ark audience, because probably as far as games go, that's the one that feels the most like this. But Lost Ark was also not a game I liked, so I don't know. I will say, like, this is some praise coming. It has the best story of any ARPG I've played. Like, they seem to have doubled down on the actual story elements.
And that's a low bar.
Right, it's a really low bar, but like, I'm not talking lore and world building. I'm talking actual story. So like, that's cool, but it also lends me to believe that this is going to be one of those games that like a lot of people play through one time and then never again, because I don't see this really appealing to a lot of the people that do, D2 ladders or D3 seasons or PoE leagues or Last Epoch cycles whenever they become a thing. Like, those are your repeatable experiences, and I don't know that this is going to really apply to those. I don't know. Like, I don't know what they're going to draw in for a seasonal track to keep people coming back and giving them money. Because clearly they've tried to build this in a way to have like a battle pass and a this and a that, so that you'll hopefully keep coming back and spending money so you can have long-tailed transactions.
Can I talk for a minute about the egregiousness of a battle pass in a $70 AAA MMO? Like, it doesn't feel good.
No.
I happily pay for battle passes in some mobile games and free games. Like, it's fine, because those are games that I'm not paying a full premium AAA game price for up front. And there's also some games, I mean, I'll be honest, Diablo 3, for as long as it has been since I have been able to give them money, up until my moral disagreements with how Blizzard is being run, I would have happily given them money for a battle pass eventually, right? Like, after many years of playing the game and not being able to pay them for it. But like right out of the gate on a brand new full price game feels a little gross.
Or like Last Epoch is really cheap, and I would happily buy a battle pass to go with Last Epoch if that's how they want to fund their seasonal content.
Right. I would prefer to just like have some cosmetic stuff that I could pick and choose what I wanted. Like, that would be my preference. But yeah, like having that kind of stuff in a full price game right out the gate makes me a little
Well, we can't even see what the battle pass is right now, I don't think, because like I haven't seen a way to see it in game.
But yet they're charging people for it essentially with their
Yeah.
packs. I mean, right? Their premium packs.
Yeah, the
Come
extra
with a
special
month
bundle
of-
from
comes
like a
with it.
season pass kind of thing where it's like, oh, buy all the DLC up front.
Yeah, no, like that I am okay with, but that is not the sense I'm getting from this, because if I remember the description right, it was like you get the battle pass, and if you get the extra bonus version, you get the battle pass and whatever gives you 20 levels free in the battle
Yeah.
pass. Like
Yeah.
that sounds like a regular battle pass to me, and
Yeah, the way it's been staged, it sounds like it's going to be something similar to what they had in Diablo Immortal. So there'll probably be some cosmetics that are tied to it, and then like crafting materials or something like that you get doled out every level. I don't know. Like I've seen a lot of people that are happy with it, and I've also seen a lot of people that have kind of mixed feelings like I do. So it'll be interesting to see how this game launches and how it's received.
now there's another beta weekend for people who didn't necessarily pay for it up front, right?
Yep. Next weekend, I think the 24th is when it begins. And it's just for anybody that's got a Battle.net account. They can download it and play it.
Yeah, so I'm eager to get in and give it more of a chance, but at this point, I still feel a moral obligation not to give any money to Blizzard. So, until they have new leadership or get sold or what have you, I won't be purchasing Diablo 4, but I would like to be able to give it a fair shake of at least trying it out in the beta. So hopefully next weekend I can hop in and run through a little bit.
Yeah, like had I not had a copy gifted to me, which was super generous, mind you, but I probably wouldn't have picked it up. Like I today, well actually yesterday, I had several moments where like if I had picked this up on Steam, I would have contemplated refunding.
Yikes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would have, because it's not really the fault of the game. It's just this is not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But I tell you what's beating my expectations. Last Epoch.
Yeah.
Yeah, Grace and I were able to do some of the in-game content this week, and it was pretty great. Like it was easy to drop in. Like there's some weirdness in that the person who starts the group is basically running their copy of the monolith, but it didn't seem too big of a deal.
You still get the stability, right? So like the bar that you fill up will fill up whether you're the leader or not.
Right.
But you just don't sort of get to control the path that you take if you're not the party leader, which seems fine.
Well, and like you don't get predictive rewards at the end of a monolith. You basically like get 2 random rewards to choose from, but honestly, like a lot of times the things I was getting from running it as the also ran were better than the things I was getting from being the one controlling the monolith. So like I do not mind not being in control.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was very simple to hop in and out, as I would hope. It was not particularly punitive to have multiple people in a party.
Oh, that's a big plus.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it raises the enemy health like you might expect, but it's not quite Path of Exile levels, and there's no. I mean, the way that the monolith system works is if you go in there and you fail, you don't get rewards. And that's still true if you're in a party, but if one person fails and the other person does not die, first of all, the person who died can still zone back in and continue helping. And if you die, you won't get rewards, just like you wouldn't if you were running by yourself. But the other person still might if they don't
Right.
die.
It doesn't brick the monolith.
Right. So it seems about as fair as it can be, given the way that the system is set up.
Yeah, I don't love the one death you're out of rewards thing, but I mean, I guess they've built around that, and there's more than enough stuff that you can do to get like by the time you hit your stability, if you have one shot everything, you will have barely scratched the surface of the maps that are available in that monolith.
Mm-hmm. And you can always keep resetting them. It will up the difficulty slightly and up the rewards slightly as well. So even if you clear the whole thing, there's still more to do. But it was a good time just running around together. And the monolith echoes are, I would say, they're a little shorter than a Path of Exile map, which also feels pretty good. Like they're, for the most part, very quick to get in and out of.
Yeah,
And
I would say they're not as fast as running a Strand map, for example, in Path of Exile, because that's just a straight shot to the boss, but they're not far off that.
right. And you get the bonus of, something you don't really get with like Diablo Rifts or Diablo 3 Rifts, is you get some choice of what rewards you want. So you sort of see the map of these different echoes and you can choose your path through it. So if you want to chase down a particular type of reward, I want magic bows, I'm going to go down that path until I get to that reward. And that feels good, just to have that little extra bit of control. You also get just a random reward chest in addition to whatever the specific reward you're chasing is. So there's also still just that opportunity for the fun of, ooh, I got a unique I wasn't expecting.
And also there's just in-map drops, so and those add up to the every so often you end up with an option to go after a set item or a unique or something like that, and those feel good because that feels a little bit more special than your average generic reward.
But I just appreciate the opportunity to be able to chase the things that I actually need, a little bit at least, while still having enough of the random loot that I obviously want from an ARPG.
And realistically, you can start monoliths really early.
Oh yeah. It's actually one of my favorite things about this game is that you can unlock what is essentially the end game somewhere around 20 to 25, depending on how fast you're plowing through the story. And the first monolith is level 58. So it's up to you whether you want to try that when you get there. But I think I hopped in on my Necro at around 35 and it was fine. No problem. And way better experience than running the story. And
you get a lot of really fast catch-up experience when you start monoliths early.
Yeah. And it meant that I had options because, we all know how the story is in ARPGs. Like, this one is fine. It's definitely by far not the worst that I've seen. It's actually among the more, I don't know, I'd say middle to high end story-wise. It's not bad. But I get the option to just bounce back and forth between, I'll do a little bit of the endgame activity, then I'll go do some of the story. And instead of forcing me to plow through a, sort of mediocre story and until I get to the endgame, I can choose how much I want to do. And it means that I can over level everything, go back and plow through it all at once, or I can bounce around. And that just feels really nice to have options.
The one thing that I wish that they would add is something akin to adventure mode from Diablo 3. Because I really like bounties. And I get that there's a lot of people that hate the bounty system, feel like they're forced to do it. But for me, it's kind of a chill activity that has some purpose. There's a benefit to it, but you can pop in and do them super quick.
I'm gonna have to give this game a try, but maybe after I figure out my tech support issue of does not. It both recognizes that I have a joystick attached, the controller attached, and like I can see in the configuration that it sees when I'm moving it around, but won't let me control my character with it. And I don't understand.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I was just having the same problem trying to get a controller to work, and I'm like, why is a controller not working?
Makes me wonder if there's a current bug of some sort. Because I know
Ooh.
I've used a controller before, and I didn't have to do anything weird to make it work.
Yeah, now I'm wondering if there's a current bug if both of us are having this issue.
Maybe. I mean, I also just opened Hollow Knight, and Hollow Knight isn't working again. So,
I mean, yeah, but we know Hollow Knight's cursed. I opened Celeste and Celeste is working.
yeah, now I'm trying to remember what horrific arcane nonsense I had to do to get Hollow Knight working.
Didn't you say you had to like hack the DLLs?
Yeah, and I'm like, God, what stupid thing did I do? What did Hollow Knight do to my freaking controller again? Ugh. But yeah, I also just loaded up Last Epoch and got, why does my controller not do anything? This is cool. This is awesome.
If I remember with Hollow Knight, it was you had to like the name of the controller mattered somehow.
Yeah.
I will say, like, one of the things that I really love in Last Epoch that's kind of dumb is they have maybe the best stash system of any ARPG. Like, one, the search engine functionality works extremely well. You can search anything that's on any of the items. But two, you can create like sub-tabs underneath categories, kind of like you can in PoE, but you're just paying gold for it. So you can like really spread out. So like if you have a uniques category, you can afford to have one for like a tab for helmets and a tab for chests and a tab for all of these things. Like idols, I have a tab for how many squares they take up. So I have a 1x1 tab and a 2x1 tab and a 3x1 tab.
I have a tab for every class under idols. So I have like 2 tabs for the generic ones and then 1 tab each for each of the classes. And they're all organized under the idols category. So if I don't care about idols, I don't have to look at that.
Like
It's
I
real
wish
handy.
it had the affinity or options from Path of Exile, because like that would be the one thing that makes it perfect. Is if I could say, okay, this tab I want one-headed items to always go to when I click them in my inventory, or this tab I want, like unique helmets for this class. And I know like their filter system tells me that they can do some very specific stuff in their engine. So like that doesn't sound like it would be completely out of left field, but because like this is like I don't know if you've played with the loot filters at all, but like this is the best loot filter system because you can just go configure it in the engine.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely played with the loot filters today actually, because I finally got to the point where it's like, no, I don't need to be looking at all of these things, and it's wonderful to be able to just like I want to target this specific affix and like I only want these specific things for this kind of class, and I want to rule out these specific item bases and only look at these other ones and highlight some things in different colors. And yeah, it just feels very flexible and it's all in game, which is wonderful.
Yeah, and it's so easy. Like if you suddenly so like here's your universal filter, but also right now at this very moment, I really care about this one item or this one base. I can just quickly shoehorn a rule in and slide it up to the top, and that one is going to be one of the most important rules, and it's going to do whatever whiz bang stuff I want it to do whenever an item drops. So I hope if there is a bug regarding using
Controller
controllers
support?
that it's resolved quickly. I know they have a short list of bugs. One of them that I know Ash was concerned about was stance bars for when you transform into a specific druid form.
Oh yeah.
And they're apparently working on it. It's just, it hadn't become important until multiplayer was a thing.
The game needs subtitles.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like, I mean, that's honestly, it's kind of like, how did you get this far without subtitles?
Yeah, that's also a thought that I had, and especially today. And I did okay for most of the game, but as you get to the later quests, there's a couple places where you have like an NPC following you around and like chatting with you. And yeah, I would really love to have subtitles for that.
Well, I think it's going to your text box, but it gets lost in there, especially now that multiplayer is a thing.
It's also just not how to do subtitles.
So the other game that had a rough launch that we talked about previously was Star Citizen, and have things improved for 3.18?
Oh yeah. I mean, okay. I say that, and I might be giving off the impression that it's like, oh, it's great now. It's not. It's playable. Like I can get in, I can play it. It is not the most broken. It is not the most broken experience that Star Citizen has ever had by a long shot. It is also not the most broken experience in a video game that I have experienced in the last, I don't know, 3 months. It's also worth noting that I played Darktide in the last 3 months, so there's a bit of a low bar there. But what I can do is I've been able to get in and try out their unbelievably buried, entirely new gameplay mode. And it is the thing that has distracted me from almost everything else I've been doing this week. Because, okay, Star Citizen is a game where you can fly spaceships. There are many spaceships you can fly, and a lot of the time, the thing that separates these spaceships from one another are things like speed and handling and armament. And they've had a mode buried in a back room somewhere that's racing. And they've had like 2 racetracks that are totally separate from the entire rest of the game. You can kind of do time trials, and that's it. That's what you got. A 2-line patch note for 3.18 notes that some new racing emissions have been added, and I cannot overstate how much this is underselling it. What they did is, so the Star Citizen community has for years found places in the world that they've thought were just like cool setups, like they just had built cool stuff, and defined racetracks, and people would race in the game world. And like, as anything that heavily community built, it's pretty janky. Like, you can't actually, like, there's no support for it. So what they did was they went and talked to this in the Star Citizen racing community, took the 4 or so tracks that they had kind of defined, made them all official, including in-game credits for the XGR racing team, like that you see when you go to the tracks and when you take missions for them, and then made like 4 or 5 more. It's like half of a Mario Kart game that they just added this patch, complete with a racing rep that you can level up as you do races, and really just as you complete races. They don't care. You just need to complete them. I think you get more rep if you get better times, but you also get paid. So it's like, it's a whole gameplay loop with rewards and unlocks, and you see all these different parts of the game. It's really fun. It's honestly some of the most fun I've had in this game ever, and I've only unlocked like half the tracks so far. They've got a really, really good system where you take the mission points you to the starting line of the track. you race through the track and you're going for a time. And if they have various times that are your bar for getting better rewards, more rep, more money. Harder races pay out more, and are in like more inconvenient places. But you can just do whichever ones you like and get used to them and fly through them. And there's a bunch of different racing ships in the game already that were previously just the like edgelord dogfighter players would use, because they're like, aha, I can outmaneuver you in this racer, so it doesn't matter that it's made of paper and has terrible guns because you could just never hit me. Aha. And now they've retuned all of those. You probably don't want to fight in them, but they're great for racing. And it's just fun having an excuse to go fast and look at the beautiful environments, because a lot of them are near major cities. So you kind of go near a major city, which is also convenient if you die. Like if you smash into a wall and blow yourself up, it's nice to have a relatively short run back. But it's probably the only system in the game where everything that you would reasonably want is fully functional. Like there's nothing missing there. So it feels very complete. And it's like, it's fun to unlock new tracks. The tracks are really creative, and they have a very clever, they've updated their UI to better message multiple points. So it's always showing you 2 gates ahead, which was always the complaint of the community racing team, is that you really had to watch a bunch of videos to see what the track actually was, because you're flying around in 3D space. But it also means the tracks are having you do all kinds of cool stuff like, fly under bridges and through canyons and, all of the stuff that you just don't have a good reason to do in the game normally. You just zip around, and it's really exhilarating. It's a lot of fun.
Are these tracks at all protected from griefing, or do you still need to have an anti-grief crew if you're racing?
So every track that's near a major city is wholly within Armistice, so nobody can shoot you. I guess in theory somebody could try to ram you, I guess, but like, I don't know. I've not seen it come up, and because you would be in a city zone, it would go very poorly for you very quickly, especially because of the intensely punitive crime system that they changed this patch. And like my feelings on crime systems as a deterrent in MMOs is pretty well known, but thus far I have not seen people doing stupid nonsense around racetracks. It's not to say that it couldn't, but they do have protections against around several of the tracks that I've seen. They're also not marked unless you're on the racing mission, which is not like 100% deterrent, but does mean that you would really need to specifically decide that you're going to go grief racing, which, I guess somebody could feasibly do. People will grief anything, but I've never actually seen another person around a racetrack. Yeah, I mean, Star Citizen certainly has a very large griefing problem in Potentia.
Yeah, I've seen videos of the Daymar rally, which had a lot of like people flying over top of them, trying to make sure that no one else would shoot at any of the racers, and like the racers would have protection crews and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the Daymar rally. So the Daymar rally is a community event that is a fairly grueling long distance race across a desert moon. And at this point, there are enough people involved with the Daymar rally that they just fill up a server. But yeah, like they definitely have people flying protection, but I don't know I don't think the Daymar rally has ever been attacked. That one is particularly nonsense because it's a road. It's basically a not a road race. It's a like wheeled vehicle race, like a ground vehicle race. And when you're at a ground vehicle, you don't have waypoints. So you're relying on your air crew to tell you where you need to be going. It's very cool, but not always necessarily riveting to watch, unless you're into rally races, I guess. But yeah, that crew and XGR have done. That might be the same people. I'm not actually sure, but they've been sort of heavily involved in getting racing set up in the game, and it's really cool to see them just straight up add the community tracks with credit to the community, and then a whole bunch of support systems around this, like, admittedly kind of niche gameplay mode that's still supported. Also, watching people who are very good at it is incredibly cool. It's the advantage of having a very detailed flight model. You watch people just pull off maneuvers that feel incredibly bonkers. But yeah, I've put like hours into it this week.
Nice.
It's a ton of fun. I have always kind of been a fan of light, agile, speedy ships, and so now I have a good reason to fly them.
So I'm not sure how to segue into this one. Tutorials as games and tutorials in games and tutorials as games.
So I feel like this is sort of an old topic that I'm kind of revisiting. Is like my favorite games feel like 90% tutorial. Like we used to always like really rag on games that would over tutorialize, but like gentle tutorials that are just like, hey, here is a way here is a tool that you're going to use to solve a problem. The next screen, here's like it's the classic Mario 1-1. Like, here is a pit, you should jump over it. At the bottom is ground, you won't die if you fall in. Here is a pit, there is no bottom. If you fall into it, you will die. Like, just that slow progression. I'm running into that, like, basically that's every high-level Celeste map that I'm running into right now feels a little bit like that. Like, here's something new for you. You've probably never encountered this before. Let's give you one room where we, like, sort of let you play around with the concept. Here's the next room. We're going to ask you to try and, like, make a slight variation on this concept. And, like, ultimately trying to culminate into a really cool experience where all of the different techniques that they've been slowly teaching you builds together. And it always feels good when this happens.
I always think of classic Zelda games, like, because you could view them the same way. Like, you go to a place, they introduce you to a new mechanic, you use the new mechanic to complete the place, and now you have that new mechanic in the world for the future. And, like, I had never considered that you could say, you know, A Link to the Past is a very long tutorial, but it kind of is from that perspective.
Yeah, like every dungeon is trying to teach you, without really telling you, but like, hey, if you play around with this new mechanic you've got, you see some other stuff. What I really want to see more of in a Zelda game is like, and I feel like this is something that could probably be explored in like the final levels, is more of like the synthesis. How do these various mechanics we've given you work together in interesting ways? But yes, I definitely agree with like the idea that each dungeon is like giving you basically an introduction to the dungeon, like then it's introducing a new mechanic, and then it's the rest of the dungeon is the introduction to that mechanic up until you have a boss fight, which is probably going to be the final challenge of that mechanic. So I really enjoy it. I like games that just sort of gently guide me through new stuff. I like tutorials in games because I feel like when I stop getting taught stuff, I stop learning things. And when I stop learning things in games, that's like when I start to get bored of a game.
Yeah. I mean, A Theory of Fun, etc.
What A Theory of Fun, etc. I don't know what The Theory of Fun is.
Oh, it's Ralph Koster's book.
Okay.
Yeah. It's very good. It's very worth reading.
Okay. What is is it basically learning things is what makes things fun?
Sort of. But like, fun is a combination of learning and achieving mastery.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you're missing one of those, you're probably not having, like, I don't know. It's a good book. It's worth reading. It's a relatively short but thoughtful read.
Like achieving mastery, like that's the feeling that I get when I'm doing a lot of this stuff, and it's that feeling like I've learned something, and now I see something that I never thought I'd be able to do, and slowly but surely it gets me to that point. It's also how you can have a game whose difficulty breadth spans like not just Celeste, the base game's breadth of difficulty, but the modding community's concepts of difficulty, and still feels like you are progressively being given the skills you need to push to the next step.
Yeah, like gently teaching is so hard to do, but so important.
It makes me really also appreciate the animals in Super Metroid that are there to teach you how advanced mechanics work. Because that's also what Celeste eventually does, where you see like Madeline outlines showing you like dash in this way, and this is what your movement will look like. I love that. The just like, here's something in the background showing like this other character doing the thing we want you to do.
So I know we talked about Battletech the other day, but it sounds like you've had a chance to play with some of the newer mods.
Yeah, so I talked about trying Battletech with mods a little bit back, and like Battletech, this being the Harebrained Schemes one, that was the sort of XCOM with mechs, which I really love. I love that game. It's just a lot of fun, and I kind of played it out, and so that's when I started looking at mods, and I got frustrated because the mod community was very much in the, as many games mod communities are, very in the, we want to make this harder. And I don't necessarily want that. Like, I want interesting and I want to learn new things, sort of to Kodra's point just a moment ago. I don't necessarily want it to be like, I'm not looking for a face grinding. It's just not, difficulty as face grinding is not that interesting to me.
You're looking for new conceptual difficulty, not necessarily punishment.
Right. Like, that's just not, it doesn't appeal. It's just not that interesting to me. Because and part of it is, I don't think it's hard to make something hard. And maybe, this is sort of just, this is obvious bias. I've been doing this for 20 years, but like, if you want to make something just unbelievably hard, it's easy to do. You just make the numbers bigger. That's it. That's all you have to do.
I think what you would need in Battletech is you would kind of want to be on both sides of the spectrum, both making the mechanical numbers harder for the enemies, higher for the enemies, and also giving you, the player, more mechanical space to work in, such that, like, okay, now you have a new problem you have to solve, rather than solving it with the like tools that they've given, which you've probably already fully explored. Maybe solve them with new tools.
Yeah. Well, and so in the Battletech case, I've been playing a mod that's it's like BTA, which I think is Battletech Advanced, but it does one thing that I really don't like, and that turned me off initially. And this time I kind of just gritted my teeth through it. It basically warns you that the start of the game is really hard because of all of the balance tuning and changes that they've made, because they've made extensive changes. And the fact that the way the game populates enemies in early missions, like the decisions that it makes are, I'm not going to say immutable, but beyond the scope of the mod. It puts you up against light mechs, and like the game puts you up against light mechs and small vehicles kind of right off the bat.
Yep.
And in the base game, light mechs and small vehicles are basically fodder. Once you are reasonably skilled / have bigger mechs / whatever, you're basically coring those things like it's no tomorrow. And one of the things that BTA wants to do is say, hey, a big problem with mech games, especially the Battletech Mech Warrior, is that when you're playing them, it's this race to the biggest, baddest mechs you can get, and then That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as you can drop 4 assault mechs, there's no reason to drop anything else unless you have a weird mission that requires that you not. But the tabletop game doesn't work that way. Like, there's a role for everything in the tabletop game.
Yep.
And so BTA is like, let's fix that. I mean, also in the tabletop game, there's a reason for you to take tanks, which I don't care about. I'm playing a mech game so I can have mechs, not so I can have tanks drive around. Like, absolutely don't care about that. But as a result, they changed the way one of the core game mechanics works, specifically evasion. In the base game, the faster you move, the more evasion pips you get. And every evasion pip lowers enemy chance to hit you. It makes it harder for the enemies to hit you. And this balances reasonably between light, medium, heavy, and assault mechs, because those are different speeds. And so even your fastest assault mech is going to get like 3 evasion pips at best, if it like runs. Whereas a light mech can get up to like 8 or 9, because it can move like 4 times further.
Mm-hmm.
And in the base game, every time you shoot at a target, it loses an evasion pip, as well as there's other things that you can do to reduce them. And one of the core things that BTA does is remove the ability for evasion pips to be removed from shooting, which dramatically increases the survivability of light mechs and mediums and anything else that can go fast. Like, suddenly, just being fully armored and being super fast are reasonable ways to approach it. And because being super fast is a defense in and of itself, you can also, your tactics can also change. So instead of very carefully crawling forward, pulling enemies back, you know, a lot of the core game when I played it was like playing, you know, an old WoW dungeon where you'd have a mech that was your puller, and you'd lure enemy mechs into your team's like best firing arcs and blow them all up, and then move on to the next one. Whereas this is like, I got a super fast mech. I'm going to send it right in. I'm going to run it forward. It's going to scout for me. I'm going to see all of my opponents, but I'm also going to, like, that mech is relatively safe because it just zoomed in there and nothing's realistically going to be able to hit it. And so playing through it again, after I got through the initial hurdle of, oh, my mechs are crappy, and I'm going up against a bunch of light mechs and a bunch of tanks, all of which have been heavily buffed. You know, once you get some experience points and level up your pilots a bunch and get a little bit of, you know, better tools, it's suddenly like, okay, this is an entirely new tactical experience. And it's a new tactical experience that causes me to look at everything that I'd learned in that game previously differently. Because now sometimes I'm like, I do have a big assault mech, but I don't necessarily want to bring it here. I need to go fast. I'm going to be outnumbered. I want to not get hit. I don't want to have something big, slow, and stompy that's going to get swarmed. Unless
you can somehow keep it isolated while the other things run distraction.
Yeah, exactly. And that's its own tactic. It also, and this must have been a coding nightmare, but it also unlocks the ability to drop multiple lances. So now I'm making trade-offs between, do I want to bring 4 big assault mechs, or do I want to bring 12 light mechs? That second one is very fast, but I have to be really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's huge. Like, the ability to use all your tonnage on more than 4 mechs.
Oh yeah. No, it's big.
That's good.
It also changes the upgrades for your ship, and one of the upgrades for your ship increases your available drop tonnage. So you can't actually drop super heavy until you've upgraded your ship a bit. And so you're making like interesting trade-offs between, how do I want to upgrade my ship versus, you know, there's a bunch of different places where it's like, oh, do I want to upgrade it in this way, or like, how do I want to build out my team? So it's not only tactically more interesting, but also the strategic layer is a lot more interesting. So I've been having a blast with it. Like that was what I played over the weekend when Star Citizen was just tipped over and on fire. And the other thing that it does is it adds just a horrendous. It basically adds almost every mech that exists, including a bunch of clan mechs and a whole bunch of new technology than the base game has. And then because modders are a little extra, looks up what year those things were developed in lore and doesn't have them show up in the game until that year.
Mm-hmm.
They also built that into MechWarrior 5.
It's kind of neat if egregiously extra. Like that's a lot to really go in detail, but it is kind of neat because
that may not be why we're playing this game.
Yeah, like that may not be what I'm here for. I'm not necessarily here for like a
Wait, you aren't here for a history lesson about the Inner Sphere?
Yeah, right.
I feel like maybe you don't understand what the modding scene is actually about then.
Uh-huh.
But I will say that the first time I dropped in and saw a clan mech was terrifying.
Oh God, clan mechs are absurd.
Like that was, oh boy.
Here is one mech that is better than 3 of the mechs that you're used to put together.
I feel like something was going on in the 80s that's very similar between what Battletech was doing and what Warhammer was doing, in that here's these machines that have been passed down through generations and improved over time.
Yeah, it's legitimately really weird how much sci-fi there is in a variety of places that are like, hey, the good tech is old tech.
The end of advancement, the post-lapse, like we've fallen, and like now.
I mean, to be fair, we have some of that going on right now. There is a whole, like, especially when it comes to like shop equipment, there is a whole thing of people trying to farm things from the 70s when the machines were built better.
Yeah.
Like, I can kind of see it because, like, we've been in this cycle with our tech of, we build it and then we keep making it cheaper and keep making it cheaper and cutting corners to keep the cost down.
Well,
like Cory-Doctorow's and shitification.
Well, and if we hit a point for whatever reason that this stuff stopped being made in 50 years, the newest stuff that's being made now, that's not what'll still be around because it can't. Right. It's not built to be maintained.
I mean, there may be a reality of like a time when the only technology functioning has transistors in it and vacuum tubes,
like pre-90s tech. Yeah.
It's all post-apoc, but it's also all in service of like that whole, hey, maybe we go on an adventure. Like, honestly, it's bad. Like, one of the reasons I do find MechWarrior interesting is because like it has to have a functioning economy, and like that that scarcity means like they're like going on an adventure to get an item might be worth it because that might be the only way to get that item.
Yeah, well, it's one more thing that ultimately is really drawing from like Tolkien, which all the fantasy drew from Tolkien and half the sci-fi drew from Tolkien too, because all the good stuff was made in a previous age, and the things that are made now just aren't as good.
And this is because we had one absolute madman who decided to just be as extra as possible.
You want a sword that can kill a Nazgul? Yeah, they don't make those anymore. Go dig up a barrow. You might find one.
I liked that moment where I was like looking at a bunch of different translations of like, what was it? It was it was Western to it was Sindarin to Ash tongue, and I was like, wait a second, the word for them is always ul.
Oh, the black speech.
Yes, the black speech. And I was like, does that just make Nazguls, which Nazg means ring thems?
Yes.
Yes.
Like if you look at the one ring to bind them all, or one in the darkness bind them, each of those stanzas has the word them in it, and in each of the black tongue, it's always ul.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, ring wraiths are actually ring thems. People just called them wraiths because thems wasn't sufficiently spooky enough.
Yeah, wraiths are spookier.
Tolkien is very proud that I figured this out because this is also how language works.
I mean, also Frodo Baggins' real name is Morolabingi.
Yes, but
Tolkien was nuts.
Yeah, yes. No, Frodo Baggins is just the English translation of the Western language found in the Red Book of Westmarch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think
That's
think Tolkien. I don't think Tolkien gets 100% of the credit because there's a bunch of Japanese media that also does this completely independently of Tolkien, near as I can tell. But like the old tech being so much better in JRPGs, for example, is a thing.
I mean, JRPGs mostly stem from like Ultima and Wizardry and D&D,
Yeah.
which ultimately comes from Tolkien.
It's true, but there are other things going on.
It's true.
Culturally, that draw upon that.
Yes,
significantly predate Tolkien.
Yeah, there's some weird cultural soup happening here. So I don't know where the old stuff is better, might come from in Japanese lore, but it definitely feels like something Tolkien had.
And like it may simply come from like, weapon craft, because there's a lot of techniques that were lost through the generations of how specific alloys were created and specific forging techniques.
Yeah, the whole Damascus steel problem.
Oh yeah.
I hear we finally figured out how we have a theory on how Roman concrete works.
Yes.
And it only works in that region with those materials.
Is it that region? I thought it was any salt water with that mix of concrete and limestone.
But also there's like volcanic ash mixed into it as well, I think.
Well, is there?
The ash was the previous like thing that they were like thinking was possibly the key element.
Yeah, I thought the actual thing they figured out is that certain the form of limestone when it was exposed to salt water or ocean water
would create calcium.
Yeah,
would basically be constantly repairing itself.
Yeah, it's self-healing.
Yeah. That basically will like recrystallize when it reacts with water. So yeah. So which means that like they might be able to reproduce this using like quicklime. But yeah, lots of things like that where like either everybody knew how it was done, so nobody bothered to write down the specifics, or some element was like specifically kept secret and lost to time.
Well, there were a lot of those things that were passed down verbally as kind of a trade secret.
Mm-hmm.
And when you run out of verbals, you run out of knowledge.
Well, and you hit that point if something's passed down long enough, like the people that are doing it now don't even necessarily know the reason that specific elements were included, and
it just becomes ritual.
Yeah, or maybe they don't have something, or they have to substitute something, and it seems to work just as well. So I guess that part wasn't important.
And there were like especially in alchemy recipes, there were purposefully things in there that were wrong that anyone that was properly trained would understand to ignore. But like if you go read the directions, who knows what were the right ones versus what were the wrong ones, set to mislead people. And like I think that happened in like non-questionable things as well.
Oh, probably.
And this this is back to the cult of wine, which was like a secret cult, and so their rituals and initiations were all like secret and you weren't allowed to write them down. So we have no idea how the original wine was made. It was religious.
Now we just put all the pieces that we don't want people to know about in the supplemental materials of a scientific paper.
I don't want to read them anyway.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, again, I wonder if we'll see a similar sort of thing in, in a few decades when all of the discords have vanished into the ether.
I am very thankful for the various internet archivers out there that will be the only way any of this ephemera survives. Because if you think about, like, there's so much just lost to history from the early 90s internet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so much of the past 30 years of the internet is gone forever. Like hugely important websites that have disappeared, and there's nothing left of them.
Yeah, in that time period prior to the Wayback Machine. But even then, like, I've gone back and looked at some of my past stuff, and pages that did work on the Wayback Machine sometimes no longer work. And who knows why?
Yeah. And especially the older ones, it's very dependent on somebody, caring enough to, like, go to the Internet Archive and push the take a snapshot of this thing button.
I was going to say, very important sites, and also my Pokemon fanfiction site from GeoCities, which I'm pretty happy is no longer on the internet.
I'm pretty sure I found a copy of that once.
No.
Oh man,
this is back before.
This is critical reading. All of a sudden,
no, this is back before fanfiction.net existed.
Uh-huh.
Back when fanfictions literally were just like, oh, I have a GeoCities site, so I'm going to upload my stuff here, and we were part of WebRings, and it was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, back in the day, I was super into the Palladium role-playing system, aka Rifts, aka
Rifts.
Ninjas and Super Spies, and Superheroes Unlimited, and or Heroes Unlimited.
TMNT and Other Strangeness.
TMNT, yeah. So, like, that system was a pain in the ass to create rapid encounters because it basically wanted you to roll a full character every time you were going to use it for anything. So I created, in college, thinking I was terribly clever, this series of things called instant antagonists that were basically just like, here's the bare minimum of stats you need for a dinosaur or for a skeleton, or, so you just grab one of these dumb things and throw it in your encounter.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all on a website hosted from the university. And I never thought to archive any of that stuff, but I had done a ton of them. And then years later, I found out someone picked up and continued that thing. Because, like, I had posted, like, this is how I did it. This is the rules I had generated. And some rando out in the world had gone on and created a whole ton of this stuff. And I think it's actually on DriveThruRPG, including some of the ones that I think I had created. But, like, other than that, like, that would have never existed. Like, that was just a thing I thought was cool and threw up on the web host I had access to, never thinking anything about it.
Like, so much stuff I posted on Prodigy back, in the early 90s, gone forever.
The one thing that is wildly available is Usenet. There's pretty good archiving of Usenet. I mean, that is the non-binary ones. No one archived the binary ones, thankfully.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's just weird. Every so often, it occurs to me that, like, not even a decade ago, like, Cute Overload was this huge, massive thing on the internet, and it's just gone. It doesn't exist anymore. Same thing with Regretsy. Regretsy was massive, vanished into the ether.
Remember when Can Has Cheeseburger was a popular website?
Yeah, like, just like so much internet culture, like, just lost.
Like, Encyclopedia Dramatica has some of it on there, but, like, it's really newer stuff.
Yep. And just to twist the knife, E-Bomb's World is still there.
But, like, it surely doesn't have a lot of the old content, though.
Oh, probably not. And even if it does, it's got his, awful watermark stamped all over it.
Yeah. sites that steal an item and then throw their watermark on it. Weird thing that I have learned. Google, as connected as it is, really takes for granted that you're going to be using all of its services, because a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago now, I made the conscientious decision to stop using Google as a search engine, and I started using DuckDuckGo.
Mhm.
And everything was fine for a while. Now, YouTube, its recommendations are just nonsense, like unrelated to anything I care about. And I assume it was getting most of its preference information off of the search engine.
Probably. Now it's just trying to like shove whatever is the
Whatever
most
is popular,
stuff.
like it's the equivalent of things showing up on your Steam wish list
Yeah.
because it's popular.
Yeah. And it's just bad.
If Google wanted you to rely on the interconnectivity of all their services, they should probably stop killing them all.
I know.
Yes.
It really is interesting that has kind of become their mimetic legacy.
Yep. Take over a space, make the best thing in that space so that
Then
everything else
destroy
that was
it.
in it dies, and then kill off the thing they made.
And like, I don't know if this is a conscious decision that they've made, but it's certainly an effect that is felt.
I mean, yeah, I don't know that I doubt that it's deliberate, but they sure keep doing it. Like, and I think we're about at the point where they've reached it's time to kill search engines.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what that's going to be like.
I feel like I don't know. They're trying to say AI is going to kill search engines, and I'm not sure about that.
I mean, they'll probably make it more likely that your search engine won't bring you back anything useful and or accurate.
Now my search engine confidently lies to me.
Exactly.
Great. That's what I needed.
Yeah, there goes like 3/4 of my job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not good. Well, that was depressing. How about something cheery
Yeah, I know.
before we
Like-
finish off?
Like, wait. Gee, thanks, Bel. Way to create our discussion.
Let's not end on a down note.
Something not about Megacorps.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a positive note. To some extent, all of the DIY software that's floating around, initiatives to get rid of Twitter and Meta and all of those things, has also sort of stoked the fires of revival of things that people had abandoned. Like, I have seen a lot of people create new blogs recently just so that they can have a place that is theirs for
Mhm.
them to store stuff.
I love
So-
this so much.
That's a good
Yeah.
thing.
Like,
I mean-
that gives me hope. Like maybe we've learned our lesson that we shouldn't offload our culture onto a corporation.
Yeah. I mean, one of the few blogs that's still going and that I still read, from that I started reading, gosh, almost 20 years ago, is John Scalzi's blog, Whatever. And one of the things that he has repeatedly said then and now is, like, he has this space that is his, that he has complete control over, and he's not going to use, some other, like, he deliberately chose to do it himself for that very reason, so that it won't just vanish like a GeoCities site or, what
Yeah.
have you.
I mean,
And it's worked.
I still have my blog. I haven't posted my blog in like literally years, but it's there.
Well, like when
I need
during the crisis of everyone disappearing from everything, I remember one of the things that I had just posted was like, if in the future you ever need to get a hold of me, you will probably be able to find out whatever I am actively using on my blog that's now been there for, I don't know, going on 15 years.
Hmm.
Even web rings are making a comeback.
That's hilarious.
Comeback, you say?
Or at least I have seen people using them more lately, just as a way of linking together these random islands.
I mean, if you can't rely on search engines to take you to the thing you need,
Okay,
we're
all
back
right.
to web
So
rings.
I have to ask, because this feels so perpendicular to my entire internet experience. Did people actually? I remember the little web ring logos and other stuff. Did anyone ever click on those?
Oh, absolutely.
I did all the
Yeah, I
time.
did.
Yeah.
Yes!
I did all
Yeah, I
the time.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
That was how you discovered new sites.
Yeah. Like
Exactly.
you went to a site that was related to a thing that you cared about, and chances are you would get other sites related to that thing in the web ring.
Yeah,
I was an avid consumer of all KeenSpot web ring sites.
Oh yeah. Like I mean that's how I how I found half the webcomics that I read back in the early days
Oh yeah.
of webcomics.
No, yeah. Like
Yep.
I
So
got
much
into
fan fiction.
PvP online. Now I'm
Yeah.
gonna read Sluggy Freelance or
Oh yeah. And so much, like, we didn't have fanfiction.net. We couldn't just go to one site to get it all. We had web rings of fanfiction sites.
Yeah. Or like I'd find a site for, some particular role playing game and hey, they're on a web ring. Okay, let's see what other sites are on that same web ring.
And that was how you found weird sites of homebrew rules.
Mm-hmm. Like all the different sites, like doing like the World of Darkness, system, like
Yep.
adaptations of every single property you can think of.
Abe Dashiell's Web of Darkness.
Yeah.
And like I found somebody who had archived that, but I need to find it again and like run an HTTP copier on it and try and clone my own copy.
Yeah.
I need to emphasize that this to me feels no different than if you had been like, oh yeah, we eat the peel of a banana. Why wouldn't you?
No, you're the weird one.
Yeah. Like I had a site that was on a couple of web rings.
Yeah, I did too. Like I had
several
of my sites
for a
were on
comic
them.
book, and so so I was on one web ring for that particular comic book, and another for comics in general, and yeah.
I mean that was social medias before social media.
Yeah.
Those web ring links were like probably number 3 in things that I considered risky clicks.
I mean, this was from an era pre-website is going to kill your computer if you click the wrong one.
I didn't need websites to kill my computer for them to be risky clicks. Let's be fair.
Yeah, because web rings are from before the days of internet advertising, like destroying the internet for a while. I mean,
to be fair, it's still pretty destroyed.
It's still pretty bad.
I was not worried about my computer getting hacked. That was not the reason that I did not click random links.
I mean, generally people were pretty good about like paying attention to who else was on the web ring with them, and
I mean, I will say, oops, I clicked on Goatsy was a reason not to click on random links.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, because that stuff was all out there too. It's true. God, I bet half of those kids these days would now have no idea what you were talking about if you told them about it.
Yeah, no. They've probably seen memes based on it, but would have no idea what the original was. And we're not going to get into it.
No.
I'm just saying.
No, I'm not going to like name any of these things. God. Because they got so much worse than just Goatsy.
Yeah, I mean, but like that was also kind of a rite of passage.
Yeah.
I managed to dodge it, and not that one. I didn't dodge that one, but I dodged a lot of the really bad ones, I'm told.
I did not.
Ugh.
But for everything like that,
links I didn't know.
There was all your base are belong to us, which was delightful.
That was wonderful. Yes, the ultimate showdown of Ultimate Destiny.
Back when Chuck Norris was Last Epoch meme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I think one of my favorites from the olden days is Power Thirst. If you don't know that, you should Google it sometime, or Bing it, or DuckDuckGo it, or what have you.
I will say, DuckDuckGo is a pretty delightful browsing experience. I was surprised that its image search engine is actually better.
I know what is the most cheerful thing. All of Homestar Runner is available and not Flash.
Yes.
And you can still watch all of those things, and they're still delightful.
I will forever say deleted instead of deleted.
Yes.
Speedmail.
Flagrant system error.
And we did not install the light switch so that the cheat could have light switch raves. System is down.
I hope you enjoy this podcast from old nerds.
Yes. This podcast, which will probably disappear from the internet someday.
At some
because
point.
Of the internet.
Man, like I have basically the files that I use to edit every show for every episode that we've ever recorded. So, like, in theory, it could resurrect in another form if something happened to it.
Just make some mixtapes.
Yeah.
I've thought about trying to grab clips, but it just seems entirely too tedious.
No, okay. I can wrap up my joyful thing. Watching some TV shows while trying to put the baby to sleep, I discovered that canonically, not only did Jean-Luc Picard make Beverly Crusher a mixtape, she listened to it for 20 years.
I love it.
Wild.
Right?
That's how
Why
you know
would
they
you
were
even
truly
include
meant
that
to
in the
be.
show? I don't know, but here we are.
Anyway,
I would
hopefully you
listen
enjoyed
to
the
any
show.
mixtape made by Patrick Stewart, by the way. It would be deeply surreal.
No, Patrick Stewart does not listen to this at all. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.